Survivors, advocates worry about potential change to sex assault statute of limitations bills. There are two bills still working their way through the legislature, one in the Senate, SB 5649, and another in the House, HB 1231, that would eliminate the statute of limitations for 8 sex crimes involving victims 16 and under, including rape, molestation, and exploitation, while extending them to 20 years for most sex crimes involving victims 16 and older. Rep. Dan Griffey is behind the House bill, and has been fighting for years to get this done, sharing the very personal experience of his wife who was sexually abused as a child, and his daughter, who, 20 years later, survived a horrific attack. Our daughter was raped and left for dead in Anchorage, Alaska, and the pain that I felt was terrible, but the pain and the shame that my wife felt by thinking she didn't do enough to protect our daughter we'll never get over in our family, Griffey said from the House floor in March. Griffey knows just how hard it can be for sexual assault survivors to come forward. He had to push his daughter to go to police, but says by the time she did, it was too late, and prosecutors said they couldn't file a case. It was a similar situation with his wife, which is why Griffey says it is vitally important this legislation, which he's pushed for more than 4 years, finally get passed this session. Even if it is not as strong as he had originally hoped. The original version of Griffey's bill would have eliminated the statute of limitations altogether, but in order to give it a better chance of passing, Griffey pared his down to match the nearly identical version in the Senate. Senator Manka Dhingra is behind the Senate version, and says she introduced the bill after seeing the need to eliminate or extend the statute of limitations firsthand in her job as a King County prosecutor. It recognizes the science of trauma and how trauma is addressed by survivors, and makes sure that we are making our laws consistent with the science of trauma and disclosure when people feel comfortable talking about what has happened to them, Dhingra said in a recent interview. Getting to the point of being comfortable talking or reporting can take years for sexual assault survivors, especially for children. We also know historically that perpetrators who target minors tend to repeat the behavior over and over again, and because we are dealing with such vulnerable victims, we do want to make sure that whenever they're in a space where they can talk about their abuse, they should have the ability to do so. It really is an attempt to make sure we are going after the serial pedophiles, Dhingra said. Unlike Griffey's bill, Dhingra's version also changes the law surrounding rape in the third degree, which deals with consent, making it the favored version among many sexual assault survivors and advocates. While rape in the first and second degree can only be charged when there's an obvious threat or force, such as a weapon being used, rape in the third degree centers more on instances of date rape or when a victim knows their rapist. Currently, the language of the law to prosecute essentially requires the victim to prove they said no, or that they fought back hard enough, which can be difficult, especially if the victim has been drugged by their attacker or plied with alcohol. Dhingra's bill removes that language. It's about making sure that we don't require the survivors to prove they said no, Dhingra explained. This is a burden that is only placed basically on women in this context, Dhingra added. For no other crime in the criminal justice system do we say that the victim specifically has to say no before you can prosecute. We have to make sure that is erased from our books because we believe women. At this point, both bills have passed their individual chambers, and are making their way through committees in the opposite chamber, with committee votes set for both next week. The effort to change the statute of limitations has made it further through the process than in years past, and Rep.